Welcome to another episode of the Strong Talk podcast. I am Kalle Beck, joined by my co-host Michael Battolino, and our guest this week, Josh Thigpen, creator of the Cube Method for Strongman. Cube Method for Strongman 3 comes out. If you're listening to this, it's out. So, how you doing today, Josh? All done writing, and you ready to put this out to the world? So, how's it feel to get it done?
Yeah, man, doing good. Feels great to get it out there. I've worked for a while on this thing, and really kind of been a while. I wasn't even going to put another one out. I had, I think two's been out for like 2 years now, and that was just going to be it. But I kind of started messing around with some training programs as I got back into training and competing, and just realized there's another way to do it. And I think, the program is complete now. Like, I think it's a much better program. I mean, the first two are great, but I think this really ties it all up. So real happy to get it out there and let everybody start training on the program, or programs, I should say.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think it might even be more than 2 years when Cube 2.0 came out, because that's pretty much when I had to figure out how to set up a store on starting Strongman. Because you're like, hey, I want to carry
Oh,
this. I'm
that's
like,
right.
I
Yeah.
think I can do this. So it was really the first product I carried, and now there's pretty much everything you need for Strongman on there. So it's you definitely played a role in kickstarting that, and so it's been fun, and we've talked about we talk from time to time, and it's always been like, yeah, doing this, and we talk about different parts of training once you've been doing it for a while. So I think so you competed in World's Strongest Man last when it was in Malaysia, I think, and
Yeah.
then like you said, you kind of took a break. So and then you
Right.
needed to come back to training. So what what was the catalyst for that, where you came back, and what was new that you had to address, which went into this?
Yeah. After Worlds in 2015, I was just like, I got to take a rest. I mean, a rest. I feel like I took like years off my life getting ready for World's Strongest Man 2015. I mean, just like my body was beat up, and a couple of things I was trying to heal up, and I just didn't even want to look or think about strongman or anything for a while. And so I actually stopped training and lost a ton of weight, and just was like, you know, uh, eating candy every night for dinner and whatnot. Just like, forget this. But of course, you get that invite out to China, and you cannot, as you know, Kel, you cannot say no to going out there to these contests that I mean, it's just a blast, and they pay us well and they treat us really well out there, and I just love going out there. So I was like, well, I guess, even though I haven't done a single workout in a year and a half, I guess I'm gonna go do a little something. So I got in some kind of shape as quickly as I could. And that kind of started, the catalyst for Cube for Strongman 3. I just I needed to really get in shape quickly. And I thought, well, what's the quickest way to do this? So I put together a program, and then I got into some kind of shape. I ended up taking second. Mike Burke, of course, is a monster. And so he was able to take it, but I was somehow able to get in shape. And so after that, of course, the hunger started to kick back in, and said, well, maybe Fit Expo in January. So I just started implementing some different things into the Cube for Strongman program to get in shape for Fit Expo, and it all really worked out really well. I mean, at Fit Expo, we had 4 different overhead implements that we had to be prepared for.
Sure.
And so I had to really, mix it up and kind of increase some overhead frequency and find the best way to do that. So, yeah, it ended up getting me in shape for Fit Expo somewhat. When you start from scratch, you're not going to be at your very best, within a short amount of time. But I was able to go out there and take third, and I really think the program had a lot to do with that. The different types, I kind of mixed it up a couple different ways, and
Mm-hmm.
so the training, and so So yeah, that's kind of how it went. It's just kind of out of necessity. I had to fix it. I had to switch up the program a little bit and
So
found some ways that really worked.
what did you change? What were the biggest changes from the 2.0?
Well, it's just like like for overhead, as I've always said, I think overhead is the most important event. And people don't understand what I say when I talk about that.
Statistics.
Well, yeah, exactly. If you just look at like the most seen event and competition, it's always the overhead. And it's like I've seen some guys, they all have the same amount of points and stuff like that, so they're all worth the same. It's like, yeah, you're missing the point of what I'm saying. But I also knew that a lot of great pressers out there, they train overhead more than once a week.
Yeah.
Now, overhead was always a strength for me, so I had always just trained it once a week, and it worked. But I heard some feedback as well from a lot of people doing cube for strongman. The only thing that a lot of things they've said along the way is like, maybe I could have used some more overhead volume, or maybe if anything didn't quite go up along with everything else, maybe it was the overhead. So I thought, well, now's a good time to kind of implement some more. So in the cube, there's definitely several different ways to increase the volume of overhead pressing. So you have twice a week, and then you have 3 times a week rotations, and of course using cube rotations with speed, repetition, and heavy.
Yeah.
And so
you want to go into that a little bit more, as if people are unfamiliar with what the cube actually. Just a quick synopsis of what it means, other than just a name for a program. It's how a program's structured, like inside a cube.
Right. Yeah. The way to rotate things is when you're trying to get ready for strongman, you have to get there's so many different variables that you need to get ready for, and in any strongman competition, you might see something for repetition. You might have to have repetition strength. You might see heavy max events, and so you need to train heavy. And you might have some explosive events, whether it's a throwing event or really anything can be explosive. I mean, loading a stone is explosive movement, so you always want to be training those fast twitch fibers. And so, but obviously in strongman, there's so much beating on your body that you need to really rotate everything in a way that's going to allow you to recover. And, there have been other programs out there that guys have been using, whether it's, West Side or whatever, that, they kind of felt like, well, maybe we can just try this, but it didn't properly, in my opinion, rotate everything the way you needed to. And so I just kind of found a unique way of, over 3 weeks time, rotating squat, overhead, and deadlift through repetition, speed, and overhead days. And so you're never doing the same one in the same week.
Sure.
At least in the old program, that was kind of the first 2. That's kind of the idea, is that you're never doing them within the same week, and then then you rotate those again the next week, and then again on the 3rd week, to where you're doing something different on each lift. But so that's kind of the basis behind it, is just to prepare you for everything and rotate them in a way that you can recover and train them all, get everything you need. And then obviously the strongman events on Saturdays, we rotate those as well between heavy and lighter for speed, so that you can get the best of both worlds there. So that's kind of the basis of the cube, really. So, why it's called the cube is kind of an interesting thing, is that I had created the program back in 2011, and then I found out that Brandon was kind of doing something similar, Brandon Lilly, for powerlifting,
Sure.
and he had come up with a name for his, and so I just went with it because I didn't have a name, and so I thought when it clicked for me, I was like, oh, okay, so everything's like the power of 3, so like to the 3rd power, that's cubed, but and then it's kind of just mapped out as a cube was his kind of thing, so it's like, okay, I guess that kind of works too, so we just stuck with it, and it's that's where the name comes from, the cube. But really everything is like kind of like the power of three. We have 3 weeks, 3 training rotations, things like that.
Yeah, I think it's especially funny. Like, of course, Brandon Lilly. You guys are kind of simultaneously running the same program, and then you hear all these other people because it was so successful for both of you. This style, and a name helps, like something that people can identify with. Like it's everything. Sometimes it's funny how
Right.
that works, but then everyone else who then claims to have invented it before, and it's like, I'm sure a bunch of people did. Like, it's a good concept, but nothing's. It's just I always find that funny how everyone also has the same idea to have a resource for strongman. Oh, I was doing this before. I'm like, yeah, people do that. That's business. Then someone else comes along and then does something, and you see if they do a
Right.
better job or not.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a whole other
I've had a lot of
tangent.
people tell me that they invented it
Yeah.
before I did, and
How,
it's like, okay, man, but it's all good,
yeah. And then, in the same, I take aspects of it and apply it to my own training, or, and I followed it for a bit, or even, to my clients' training. But but you do the same to then formulate what you're doing. It's not stealing, I think is a good point to make with anyone. That's how you learn. You try different
Oh, sure.
systems, and then you learn from them, and you take bits here, bits there, and you make it your own. But
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
It's like you said, everyone's always, I mean, any program out there gets techniques from other programs, and they learn that from somebody else, and they learn that from somebody else, and so it's like, you know um but yeah, if somebody had come up with a similar thing before, then that's on them, and whatever, but yeah, I always say there's always seems to be like some kind of competition between programs and stuff, and
Yeah.
I'm never like, well, this one's, somebody will get online and be like, well, this one's better than this one, and this program is what you need. And it's just like, I don't get into that, like, if somebody wants to try another program, awesome. I'm just saying, here's a way to do it. And I think just so happen to think it's the best way. But if you want to do something else, then right on, go for it. But if I was starting out in strongman, I would check out every resource. You would want to kind of learn as much as you possibly could. So it's not really a competition.
No, it's all just like, Mike and I sell programming, Mike sells programming, and then we also interview someone pretty much every week who's selling programming. So if it would be
Exactly.
it would be the wrong emphasis to say like, oh, you have this audience, and I'm just gonna not introduce anyone else to it or anything. But
Well, we
I'm,
all can't coach everyone. There are a lot of people in the sport,
I know, seriously, but
Yeah, Kale's currently coaching 440 strongmen. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Yeah.
it wouldn't work.
yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
if only. But yeah, people yeah, they have that approach, but I have the exact opposite. And what I find interesting is obviously selling, I think the majority of strongman specific programs on starting strongman that are out there, different ebooks, from yourself, Mike Westerling, etc., is that other coaches in the sport that I respect, I've seen them buy every single one of them, and they're people that have been doing this for decades and won national championships and stuff, and still coach people. But something new comes out, they buy it every time because they're
Right.
continuing to learn, and that's the mindset more people should have.
100%.
So
Yeah, that's the way it should be.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, but going in, yeah. So there's more overhead frequency, but I want to go back a little bit and just talk about.
Hmm.
Uh, you said you tried this, tried that. Starting out in strongman,
Hmm.
you just what was the landscape like? Well, first off, like what year was it? What was the landscape like compared to now? Like, what do you like? Just because a lot of
Strongman in general, or
yeah, just the sport, and how
yeah.
people train, and go into how people train for it, because it's like a weird thing. We've talked about it. It's like you just kind of randomly found someone who found someone, and it was a lot. The whole world's easier to connect nowadays, but I think
Yeah.
it's fun to talk about how it was, especially someone that been around it as long as you have.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, I'll go back into there's other things than just the overhead that have kind of changed, or not even changed, but have been added.
Uh-huh.
So I'll get back into those. It's not just overhead, but yeah, the strongman is it's a completely different thing now. I mean, when I started, I did my first competition in 2001, so I was 19 years old, and I had that tells everybody how old I am. But I had never. I was just like kind of there wasn't any competitions anywhere close to me. So my first competition, like the only option I had was to fly to Indiana and compete in some cornfield. It was a competition that like I think it was Chad Coy and Brian Neese were putting on, and and it was actually a big contest. So not only did I have to go fly to Indiana, I was competing against the top guys in the country at the time. Like both, there really wasn't amateur and pro necessarily quite yet. So we were all just competing together, and I just kind of did what I could. I didn't have any access to any equipment, which was another change, another difference. And that, now, I mean, especially with starting strongman, or just all there's so many, you can order equipment online. Like that would have been a dream back then. Like you couldn't order anything. There wasn't, and you could maybe get some khaki,
Maybe.
but maybe. But other than that, there was nothing that you could get. I mean, and then after a couple of years, really, Dion kind of came in and took over the amateur side of things, and some more, there's more options as far as competing goes, and strongman started to take off. It was, we still tough to find equipment, and nobody still had a training program. We all just kind of, like you said, would hear something from somebody. And I was, for the first, actually, like 3 years of competing, I just trained with weights. I didn't have any strongman equipment. So the very second that I got some equipment, I found out that Travis lived close and that he had just about everything, that he had somehow put together all this equipment. The second I started training with the equipment, I turned pro and went to Worlds within a year. So like that goes to show how much of a difference. Like you have to train the stuff, you have to have the stuff, which I think is really the benefit of what a lot of guys have today. And like you said, it's just so much more connected, and so many different options for training programs. Stuff like Travis, I went out there and I was like, hey, what are you doing for training? He was like, well, I do this. I was like, cool, I'll do it too, And it really was not a whole lot of rhyme or reason to it. But we trained hard though, and that's really what counts. It's like we may not have had the perfect program, but we really trained hard. We trained like animals, and had a blast doing it. And so we got better, and that's the same for any strongman ever. Is you just, whatever program you do, train hard, enjoy what you're doing, and you're going to get better. But it's just completely different. I mean, like, so it's just, you have equipment, you have tons of company. I mean, what is there between the two amateur federations? Maybe 300 contests that guys can do now.
Probably more. It seems like there's multiple.
Probably more.
There's, 3 or 4 every weekend somewhere at least. It seems like.
Yeah, it's amazing, right? And competitions were more varied. I'll say that. There was more strongman, traditional strongman. You had more tire flips. You have chain drags. You have full-on stone runs. Different overhead in every contest. It seemed like it's kind of like nowadays. And when I look at these contests, it's almost the exact same contest over and over again.
Yeah. Slight variations.
It's like, you're gonna have a dumbbell almost every time now. You're gonna have yoke, dumbbell, a deadlift, and like maybe some variation of stone. But so there was more variation, more of the old-time traditional strongman events when I was coming up. I think promoters just figured out the easiest, cheapest way to set up contests, So,
well, hey, let's say some promoters, because I went and bought a car 2 weeks ago and then drug I had a competition yesterday here in good old Wichita Falls, Texas, and it was the exact reason that you said. I mean, I haven't seen a car deadlift I'm assuming there hasn't been one in Texas, but over the past like 4 years, I think I've seen one or two. So I went and bought a
Right.
car. I bought a car deadlift for him in Austin. I drove it back up here, and I got it out to the field yesterday. It was awesome, and I just it's just because I wanted to have a competition that had a car deadlift. And you're right, it's a pain in the ass to set that stuff up, but it's a hell of a lot more fun. You know.
You're right. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I see, and that's awesome, man. I mean, I'd like to see more of those contests. I know no hate on anyone who does put on a
Sure.
contest for the events I mentioned. It's just a
It's a
matter
lot
of
of
like,
work, yeah.
yeah, it's kind of, you gotta kind of cut your costs and do what you got to do. I mean, but yeah, I don't know. I found the variation fun, and I enjoyed doing different events and different contests and stuff like that. But it's all good. Strongman it's even though stuff isn't as quite as varied, it's getting seems like more and more popular, at least on the amateur level. There's virtually no pro level in the United States anymore, so it's kind of
It seems like it's
a weird
starting.
thing.
Yeah, it's grown so much on the amateur side, and that's a whole topic right there. But the pro side, it seems like it's starting to pick up. Um, like there's a couple shows. Like I think you're supposed to do the one in North Carolina, which I'm going out to in a couple weeks, and it has some it has some prize money. And then it seems like it's picking up. There's this whole ISF thing, which we need to talk about at some point on the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully that ends up turning into something. But yeah, but yeah, but you look over on like strongman on the pro side, like in England's like probably bigger than it's ever been. Like you look at Europe's Strongest Man, 11,000 people. They brought back some old events. Like they had a tire flip into a chain drag, which is pretty
Yeah.
cool. And it's kind of weird. When do you think the peak was? Like it seems like the mid 2000s on the pro side was like the peak in strongman. People, tons of pro shows. People
Yeah.
making money.
100%. Yeah, 100%, man. I mean, it was like it was starting to go the way that things are going over there in Great Britain and stuff right now. I mean, because we would 2005, 2006, we packed out Mohegan Sun,
Right.
and it was kind of
That was an
we all
awesome
felt like
competition. Yeah.
the very best contest I've ever been a part of. I mean, the Mohegan Sun was my first pro competition, really, and I thought, this is the way it's going to be. We got treated, they picked us all up in a limo, took us there. They gave us this VIP status at the hotel and casino, and it's just they treated us so well. And then we go compete in the arena, in a legitimate arena, thousands of people just going crazy, and the contests were running great, just like it should be for a live arena type show. And then the bottom kind of fell out, and just like you said, mid 2000, it was headed towards that, and then I really just think the recession kind of caused the downfall of it. They just couldn't. Also part of like the Mohegan Sun downfall was that half the stadium was full of Polish people. For some reason, a bunch of Polish people worked in the casino. So of course, when Mario's there, they would pack it. You had half the crowd cheering for Marius, and half the crowd cheering for us. But and then he kind of stopped going there, and so the crowd kind of diminished. But really the recession seemed to promoters just couldn't find any contest money.
Couldn't get the sponsors again, which I keep hearing. People are picking up. I was talking to someone. They just picked up an amateur contest, like Red Bull as a sponsor. Like big companies are.
Wow.
So I think it's starting to kind of go back that way, where there's money for them to frivolously spend again. And part of me kind of gets worried because I'm like, last time people started just dumping money into strongman, that means things are too good, so the bottom's gonna fall out. But that goes beyond like strongman talk. That's like economy, like it's like
Mm-hmm.
you know, if the rent, like your, people like your gardener owns like 3 houses. Well, you got to start to worry why. You know what I mean? But
Right. Yeah.
is if people are
Mm-hmm.
starting to dump money into strongman again, but I'll try to be optimistic.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, I think it just hit it, and it's just now we're kind of recovering where it seems like these big companies, they're interested and they're out there, and I think it just takes a little bit of legwork on the promoters. Like when we did California Strongest Woman last year, I think we got, it was like $6,000 or $7,000 in prize money. Little less this year just because I didn't put in the
Mm-hmm.
work, and that's all there is to it. I didn't, you know, go out there and email these companies and stay on top of it. I'm just too busy doing other things. But we still got, the winners are still gonna get a couple $100 each. So it's something.
Nice.
It's out there. It's just
Yeah.
you
Absolutely.
gotta put in the work to get it. It's nothing in life comes to you. That's how you gotta hope.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm
You
just
got to
hoping,
ask. You got to go get it.
and you got to build up the relationships over time. You might get a sponsor, they give you
Mm-hmm.
$50 or some free stuff this time. They got a bunch of feedback. The next time they're, they want to be more of a part of it, and you just have to hope that if promoters are landing these big sponsors, that they take care of them so they keep coming back, and it wasn't just a one-time cash grab.
Right.
But yeah, that's a whole other.
Well, it's like you meant, just like kind of mentioned it's just kind of interesting. Like things couldn't be more different. You look at it. Hopefully, it is on the rise, like you're saying. But you look at, let's say, Europe's Strongest Man, 12,000 or however many people there at
Uh
the
huh.
stadium, and people watching on TV. And then you have America's Strongest Man last year with, I wasn't there, but it looked like there was maybe 10 people that showed up. Like it's
Yeah.
not competitors, just crowd.
Sure.
And it's just kind of like, okay, you want to call up Colin and Darren Sadler and be like, what are you guys doing that we could model over here?
I,
But would it work? Even if they gave us a model, I don't know if it would even work, but
Man, it's tough to say. I think like Darren, you look at the first year he promoted Europe's in a big stadium, it was pretty empty, and he probably I'd
mm-hmm.
imagine cost him some money. But 3-4 years
Yeah,
later, it's built that momentum. Um,
right.
so I think it just the same
Yeah.
kind of approach has to go that way where
Well, I think their big, as you say, their big thing is they have so much TV, so many strongman TV shows where the
hmm
guys really, people want to come out and see those guys because they've been watching them on TV. And we don't have any now really in the U.S. And Worlds is kind of like, you have to find it. You have to be looking for it.
Sure.
And so that's kind of the big deal as well, is that they've built up their TV shows so they can get people out to the stadiums. And Darren's got a little money, so he had that cash to be able to rent the stadium to begin with.
Right.
And so
Takes money to
you got
make
to have
money.
that as well. But yeah, for sure. So it's just the old U.S. classic strongman conversation that's gone on for a long time about what needs to happen. So,
Yeah, for the past 10 years. I,
but
I think overall it is improving. You just look on the prize, there might have been 30 people watching it in a parking lot last year, but the prize money was more. So it's a
well, that's true. The prize money definitely went up. Yeah, and it's no, I'm not saying anything negative towards the promotion or anything.
no,
Definitely
me
not
either.
towards Dion or anything like that. It's just a matter, of just like the crowd, like getting American people to show up to these things is, yeah, it's like pulling teeth. But the sport is still thriving overall. Like even if not at the pro level yet, just so many contests and so many, people getting into the sport.
For
So,
sure. So
uh, you know, something to be said for that. So,
absolutely. So what, like, you said you go. I think it's interesting. You go. You're like you get the phone call. You want to go to China, which is just fun in
hmm
itself.
hmm
It's you're treated amazing. It's some good money, and then you're like, okay, now I want to do the Fit Expo. That's like, that's 0 to 100. Like you're gonna pick like the hardest, like pro
hmm
show, most grueling, most events, most odd or ode events. You could say a different
Oh,
way.
I see what you did there.
Like
That's good.
it's
That's
just
good.
like that's a it's a big jump down. Like they're hard shows. They are. I've been to it most years except I didn't go down this year. But you look and the guys are beat up. Even doesn't matter who they are, how prepared they are. So what made you pick that show?
Well, just like China, I've always just loved going to Fit Expo. And it's just one of those contests that, but also because there are so many different things to get ready for, I knew that any show is going to get me ready, get me back in to competing. Might as well be Fit Expo. And they had 10 different events. There's actually 12 events, but you could pick to do only 10, and it wouldn't hurt you, So, and then there was also a lot of grip events, and which doesn't really take a lot out of you. And my grip is always a strength. I ended up second in the grip contest. So, so you kind of had that. You knew you'd have some tough events, but then you'd get to kind of back off with some grip events. And, but I like the overall look of the contest as far as just, having to get ready for everything. And I just love the show. So I was like, well, at the time when I decided to do it, I was pretty far out. So I figured, I have the ability to get ready quickly, get in shape. And so I just went after it, it put the program to the test and it worked. It got me ready. Would have liked to have done better on a few things, but that's always going to be the case. And, I got myself in good enough shape to compete well out there. And so, yeah, it's just, I just love doing it and I like the challenge. So I went after it,
Yeah, absolutely. Hey Mike, you've never done the LA Fit. You were talking about doing it last time.
Yeah,
after you did
before I
San Jose,
decided to
right?
drop some weight. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think I could do it at this body weight.
No, yeah, it's a little harder once you're getting closer to.
What's it like it was like 1,000 frame. I mean, it was with straps, but still, that's insane, and that's crazy heavy.
Yeah, it's definitely.
So what was the question there, Kale?
I don't remember, but that's all right. So I had another question about. So you take like something like the Fit Expo, and when I interviewed Zadrunas on the podcast, I asked him like how he could compete so often and have such a long career, and he said because the contests were lighter, you could do them more. Yeah. It wasn't as hard. Which and it seems like, and we all said, I think we're all the fans, all the competitors from pro to amateur, if this is the reason, we're all at fault for it, because we all said World's Strongest Man's too light for a decade. But it seems now that every pro contest wants to be a mini Arnold, and you just see athletes,
every pro and amateur contest.
Yeah, they want to be like, if the Arnold has a 1,500 pound yoke, we need a 1,200 pound yoke, and the stones need to end at 480 pounds. And I don't think people get mad that this athlete drops out or this, then they can't do this, but it's harder on the body. I feel like you can have an entertaining show with impressive weights that aren't going to kill people every weekend. Is kind of what I think might help to kind of build up a tour up for pro strongman again.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's kind of over in Europe. That's the way it is they have shows all over the place all the time that are lighter, and the guys can go do them and not kill themselves, and they can do a contest every weekend. And the promoters understand that, and they get that, and they're able to get the best guys out there because of that. And people always say, well, this is Strongman, it's supposed to be heavy. Well, of course, it's always heavy, it's going to be heavy no matter what, no matter how. Even if you lighten the events, it's still heavy. So if you're going to just try and compete with the Arnold and Worlds and stuff all the time, it's like, those are the Arnold and Worlds for a reason. In my opinion, those should be the heaviest contests, and everything else should be lighter.
Sure.
It doesn't really make any sense to do it backwards. So
I'm clapping if you can't hear that.
Awesome.
I wish more people got that.
Yeah, it was kind of like that way. Part of the thing is, when I was coming up, America was so far behind other countries that every contest was just had to be heavier and heavier so that we could kind of try and catch up. And really, it was actually doing, it ended up working eventually, but for a while there was kind of doing a disservice because the Americans would always show up beat up and slow because we had just been doing heavier and heavier stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But, so when it came to the moving events, all the other guys were flying past us because they were used to doing the lighter stuff. But it's just kind of been that American thought process. We got to go heavier and bigger and tougher. But a crowd who comes to a contest, they don't know the difference. I mean, if they're going to think 1,000 pounds is just as impressive as 1,200 pounds or 800
Yep.
pounds, and it's just no need to do that. And yeah, you're not going to get all the guys competing all the time. The good guys aren't going to necessarily show up if it's like that constantly. And so,
I feel like even if the money's there, because like
Mm-hmm.
let's say like a contest has a ton of money, I think it's going to draw people. But it's a little different if someone's so strong like Brian Shaw that they can do like their heavy's not everyone else's heavy. They could probably get away with it, but
yeah,
someone else might.
right.
Even if the money's there, they're like, but the titles that get you that recognition and what you worked for is still going to leave you too beat up for that. And I feel like you see that with a lot of these, like, the Arnold tours, like people are going there because there's a good
Mm-hmm.
paycheck, then they end up not being able to do worlds or something. And it's just but who walking past the Arnold
Mm-hmm.
really cares if the yoke's 1,100 pounds that's watching it?
Right.
I'm not sure anyone does. Like,
So to
No.
switch gears slightly, Kale, I don't know what we should call this, but you know how like on the Powercast they have like the poop story thing. You know what I'm talking about? Like
sure,
that's
sure.
their
Yeah, they
niche,
have a
right?
little bit.
So we've got to come up with something that's like the go-to. So for example, when we had Ken Nowicki on the podcast a while back, he talked about like his go-to story was that he showed up to Europe's Strongest Man, and Christoph Radzikowski looked at him. He's like, "Oh, what are you like here for? Are you hanging out?" And he's like, "No, like I'm
Here's my
competing."
bags.
So what's your go-to like strongman story? This is if you're at a party with a bunch of people that you don't know and you're kind of telling them about strongman. What's like your go-to story? Is it the Mohegan Sun? Is it your first world experience? What is it?
Well, I had a lot of similar Kenneth Nowicki experiences when I was coming up. I'm naturally more of a leaner, kind of a lankier guy. I had to really fight to put weight on, and so I never really looked like a strong man at all. But yeah, I had a few of those. In my second contest ever, I went there, and the exact same thing happened. Like the promoter, they were doing a rules meeting, and the promoter was like, "Hey, can you help me out with this? Like, can you help out with scoring and stuff?" And I was like, "No, I'm competing." He just kind of looked at me like shocked, like, "Okay," and he just kind of walked away. And ended up doing pretty well, but that fired me up. But that one in my first contest ever. I don't know if guys out there know who Brian Schoonveld is, but
They should.
Yeah.
He should. He was some new guy people may not know, but he was at the time the top American in my first strongman contest, and he was a monster. He was a big old dude, incredible presser, and went to Worlds a couple times. But my first contest, he was there, and there was a line. They had one bathroom in this place, and there was this massive line of all these top guys lined up to go to the bathroom. You got first contest jitters. I'm straight up, I got some issues going on. My stomach was messed up. So I'm in the bathroom, and I use up the very last of the toilet paper in the bathroom, and I open the door, and Brian Schoonveld standing right there, coming in next to the bathroom, and I see a line of like 10 guys waiting to go in the bathroom as well, and there's there's no toilet paper in there for him. So that was kind of like that was actually my very first experience in strongman right there. So that was kind of nerve wracking, and kind of just went and hid for a while until the contest started after that. But yeah, a lot of type of things like that, man. A lot of guys kind of always underestimated me because I was kind of skinnier and whatnot. So yeah, I know what Ken's going through there. Ken's a great guy, by the way.
How about going to Worlds for the first time? What was it like getting that call?
Oh yeah, for sure. Just even going to the qualifier at Mohegan Sun, like I was just, you can ask Ode Haugen, I was just like, when he called me up, I was like, what? Are you serious? I was just like giddy almost, like I couldn't believe it. And then when I qualified that night, I think they were taking top 4 at the time. And I just started calling up everyone, like, I can't believe this, I'm actually going to Worlds. And, there I was competing with Pujanowski and all these guys that I had been. It happened so quickly that I couldn't believe it. And we were out there in China, and it was kind of a cool thing because for whatever reason, I guess because I was jumping on stone platforms and stuff, they thought I'd be a good guy to go to promotions. So Jesse Marundi and I, they kind of flew us out there. I think we got out there a little bit earlier from everybody else. And for about a week, we traveled around China doing promotional work, being on game shows and just trying to promote the contest throughout China.
Wow.
So that was a blast, getting to travel with, there was actually Yarg Dimmick as well, Jesse, Yarrick, myself, and, Kalle. We're all going around China doing that. And this was my first World, and I was just turned pro. And so it was just, I was on cloud 9. It was just incredible. And there you are with Kaz, who was my hero growing up, and just kind of surreal, it just kind of made me think, man, you can do anything really if you believe in it, you work hard. I was the skinniest, shortest, wimpiest kid in the world, and then here I was at World's Strongest Man. And man, it was amazing. It kind of made me believe you can do just about anything you want,
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's one of the things that I've talked about is like the journey with strength training, how it makes you kind of learn about yourself and kind of work through whatever's going on in your head is what the most important part about it is, because I feel like a lot of us get into this and we're kind of like figuring out like, oh, what am I? What am I capable of? And all that stuff. And you kind of, it's so humbling, try to move as much weight as you can in a bunch of different ways that, you end up, hopefully building up some confidence and other stuff. But I remember I met Yarrick Dimmick in 2007 at Worlds. Like they had like a little break, and I was like, I think I was in the sport for like 6 months, and I went down there, and there was a break, and everyone eats lunch, and you're like looking around, and Mark Felix over there, Pujanowski's running past, and all those guys,
mm-hmm.
and Yarrick, there's like no tables left in the restaurant, and so Yarrick just sits down at my table, and he's like, I start talking to him, and he gets up and he's like, I love my Polish fans. And I was like, I never said I was Polish. I guess I am.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it was fun though. But yeah, what about you said you meeting your hero Kaz? We know you got some
mm-hmm.
Kaz stories.
That was my next story, dude.
What's the best one that you can? What's the best one you can actually repeat?
Oh man, I feel like I did the B story last time I was on your podcast.
We got a whole different bunch of listeners, though. I think
a whole different.
Yeah.
Yeah, gosh, I'm trying to think here. He's just kind of told us a lot of stories about when he was coming up and his spiritual journeys of, walking through the mountains, Mayan mountains, down in Mexico or wherever he was. I don't know where he was. Where was the Mayans? Mayans in Mexico. Anyway,
yeah.
He was down there somewhere in some Mayan mountains, and he was, tripping on mushrooms, and he had stopped training. He dropped from, he dropped from like, at the time he was like, maybe like he was only like a 275er in powerlifting. And so he decided he's going to stop training altogether. He's going to go down to the mountains, and he was just going to have a spiritual journey and see if if he could, when he came back, if he was still just as strong as he was before, to prove that it was all spiritual and mental. So he was down there tripping on mushrooms, walking through the mountains, not eating anything. And he dropped all the way down to like 210, 205, his body weight from like 275. And he was like, when I left, I was, and I forget exactly what lift he was doing. When he was like, when I left, I was benching 495 for 5 sets of 5. When I came back from the journey, weighing 210, I was benching 495 for 3 sets of 5. I only lost 2 sets. What does that tell you? So, it's kind of like, wow, Kaz lost like 70 pounds and was still benching, whatever, kind of a incredible weight. And, I was like, yeah, I guess that does kind of prove that it's all mental and spiritual, I guess, but I don't know that would work for me, but definitely worked for Kaz.
Yeah.
So for anyone out there, if you want to be like Kaz, you need to go into the mountains and drop 60 pounds and then you'll know true strength,
What's the B story? I don't know the story.
Well, I tell the B story, and it seems anticlimactic, so I don't want to set it up too big. Like anytime I tell people, like I find it hilarious, but I don't know if everyone else does. But
I retell it like it's mine.
Well, we were down. It was 2006 in Sanya, China, and we were sitting around at we had just eaten dinner, and Sanya, this was when Sanya was at an incredible resort. Like we were just, it was like paradise. And so we were sitting around, and the ocean was kind of right beside us. So you have the sound of the waves. We were sitting around tiki torches, Phil Pfister, Dave Offland, myself, and Kaz. And then you got this guy playing a violin, no joke, playing a violin in the background. So we're listening to Kaz stories, right on the ocean with these flames around us and a violin. So, I mean, it's kind of you're just kind of pinching yourself, like, is this really happening? So Pfister keeps telling Kaz, he's like, Kaz, you gotta tell these guys the B story. So Kaz gets this kind of steely look in his eyes, and he's like, all right, I'll tell him. So it's during the same time that he was down in the mountains and on this spiritual journey doing mushrooms. So he had done the mushrooms and whatever. I don't even know what you do. Do you smoke mushrooms? Do you drink mushrooms? I don't even know what you do, but he was doing mushrooms
in some sort of altered
state. And
yeah,
he was in some kind of altered state. So he was up on the mountain, and so he said, while he was up there on the mountain, kind of meditating, this bee starts buzzing around him. Buzz, buzz, and he kind of, does this buzzing sound for a while, and then the bee stops in front of him. And I said, I just looked at the bee and I said, hey. And the bee said, hey. Buzz, buzz. Bee starts buzzing around some more. And then all of a sudden the bee looks at me, and I knew it had to leave. So I said, you got to go? And the bee said, I got to go. Buzz, buzz. The bee then flies off into a beam of light that was coming down from a spaceship, flies up into this beam of light, into the spaceship, and takes off. And I'm just waving at the bee as it leaves. And he looks at us and he says, I never saw that bee again. And we're just kind of like, I'm just like gripping my chair, like, this is like, I cannot believe this story, And, you can't you kind of like, okay, is Kaz, is some of, he was dead serious. And so you're not going to laugh at the Kaz story, So, once we realized he was serious, you're just kind of gripping your chair, like, like I almost had to excuse myself, go, you're not going to laugh. So, anyway, but I mean, he was dead serious about that story, and that's, he gained some kind of, I guess, spiritual insight from the bee story, But I like to tell that one in person because you can really do it.
Sure.
He was doing this thing with his fingers, where
you do some great impressions. You're great with Kaz and Phil Pfister. That was excellent.
Oh, appreciate it, man. Yeah. I've been known to do a few strongman impressions here and there, but I honestly need to. And first and foremost, let me just say, none of this, in case the Kaz ever listens to this podcast, is out of disrespect. The Kaz is my hero.
No, not
and
at
I
all.
love the stories, and I would want to hear every last one of the stories.
And
he's such an interesting dude.
He tells some good stories, and I'm going to that North Carolina contest, and Mike and I were both at the Kaz Classic, where he kind of talks for an hour, and it's a great experience. So if anyone happens to be in Charlotte, they have that same kind of thing, like a night, like an evening with Kaz, and he just sits down and tells stories like that, and they're pretty inspirational and they're great. Much better than we can recreate here. But yeah, we're coming up on an hour. We all got busy days, so I want to talk about Cube for Strongman 3, of course. On that's going to be available. This comes out Tuesday, so if you're listening to this, you can just go to store.startingstrongman.com, pick it up. It goes. Just talk a brief. Also, what we're doing for the month of April, we're doing like a giveaway. Anyone who buys it's just entered into basically a raffle to get some prizes. What are some of the things we're contributing?
Yeah, and I'm thinking, as long as you're cool with us doing it as well, as far as going into, so like the first full month,
okay.
So like from the 11th to the 11th.
Sounds
basically. Good. So into May as well, we're going to be doing, if you buy the book, you don't have to put it in any special code or anything. We'll see your name. Mm-hmm. You have to put your name in and stuff. So we'll see that. We're going to do a drawing, anybody who buys it, for $250. There's going to be a Texas Power Concepts Circus plate loadable dumbbell. And that's going to be powder coated, whatever color you want. We have, there's also going to be like a 12-week free coaching online with me. There's going to be possibly, also any of one of the drawings is going to be for all the other books that I've done, which maybe if somebody wins that and they already have those books, we'll figure out something else. But and then I know, Kalle, you're going to throw in some stuff from Starting Strongman,
we'll have
cool stuff as well.
Some of the popular items, so that'll be summarized and all up on the product page what it is. Some of the other items that are going to go in the raffle, like everyone loves a pair of figure 8 straps, maybe a jar of tacky here, Absolutely. Maybe a grip shirt, some Starting Strongman socks, some of the like little stocking stuffers, some good items that everyone can use. But we'll probably another 4 or 5 items from the store, and we'll throw that all in there.
So even if you're on the fence about getting it, heck, there's a heck of a drawing. Just get in there and get the book, and you're in. You might win $250. Who doesn't want $250? So, it's got some cool stuff in there thrown in there. You don't even have to like Strongman to want to get in on this, But so yeah, it's going to be an awesome drawing. And also a couple of quick things that are in the book. We've also got some increased conditioning. Cube for Strongman 3 has some conditioning protocols added in, some thoughts on how to switch up deload a little bit. Just a lot of good stuff. Good 4 different variations of the program of how to train it. So yeah, a lot of good stuff in the book, and I think it's the best one so far.
Yeah,
so.
And I think a good one of the main questions we've been getting is if you need the prior books, which you can answer, but I'd say no, because it includes like a refresher on the whole cube concept, which we covered, and some of the original programming. There is more information in the first books, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's a necessity.
Yeah, right. I definitely wanted to make sure that anyone who hadn't gotten the first 2 would be caught up on the basics of the program. So I included a good summary in there. And so you don't necessarily have to get it. I'm not going to tell anybody not to buy the first 2, But at the same time, if you don't have them, you'll be fine getting just the third one as well. So yeah, you don't necessarily have to have the first two.
Sure. Maybe a bundle with all three we'll throw up there too. We'll talk about that. That's a
Yeah, I was thinking. Got some ideas for that little bundle in there.
Sounds good. Well, appreciate you coming on. You can, of course, Cube Method for Strongman. You do, personalized, one-on-one coaching as well. If anyone wants, the Cube Method tailored to their specific shows and needs, I'm pretty sure you're still doing that. So, how can people get a hold of you? Just, Josh Thigpen on Facebook, Instagram, all that stuff.
Yeah, they can get a hold of me. Facebook. Just look me up on Facebook, send me a message, or they can email me. My email is J as in Josh, J Thigpen, my last name, Inc. at gmail.com. So jthigpen Inc. at gmail.com. Yeah, you can send me a message on Instagram. You can look me up on there. Any one of those ways.
Awesome. Yeah, and it's Josh_Thigpen on Instagram. You got anything else going on, Mike?
No, man, that was awesome. I think people are gonna really enjoy that, and I still can't get over the bee story. That was outstanding.
Awesome.
No, you didn't oversell that at all.